Hey, welcome back to the channel. So up until now, my primary machine has been a machine I built like 6 years back using an i5-3470 processor. It's been a great machine. It's done really good by me. I've been able to game on it, do VR on it, and edit on it when I was doing 1080p. Now I'm getting into some 4K editing, and it's just not cutting it. It's just not powerful enough. So today we're going to go over my Coffee Lake build using the stuff you see back behind me, and it's going to include an i7-8700k processor. So here we go. Alright, now this build is not going to be a pretty one because I'm just using the same boring case that I've been using for like the past 10 years, but it's a good case. It works really well for me. I'm also going to be transferring my GTX 1070 card, so I didn't buy a new card for this, and there's nothing wrong with the power supply I have in that case as well. So the power supply is going to be the same one that I've been using. The stuff that I did buy new, like I said, I bought that i7-8700k processor. I'm planning on doing some overclocking on there, so I wanted to get the K version. For the motherboard, I got the Asus TUF Z370 Pro gaming board. Now this is a really good, affordable board, but it's really rock solid, and it's got some pretty decent overclocking features to it. And that's why I went with this after doing a bunch of research. For the RAM, I went with 16 gigabytes of the G.Skill Trident Z RGB DDR4 RAM. For the CPU cooler, I went with the Dynatron K985 cooler. This was a budget cooler. I may need to upgrade to something else when I start pushing the overclocking up. And then, of course, I got the Arctic Silver 5 thermal paste. So let's get into the build. And the first thing I'm going to do is take the stuff out of my current case and get the case all prepped for the new motherboard. Alright guys, so here's the inside of the current setup. So I'm going to keep my GTX 1070 card, I'm going to keep the power supply, and I'm going to keep the hard drives. I have the OS booting off the SSD drive, and then I just have a 7200 RPM drive in there for my files and stuff. I'm going to keep that stuff. So here I'm going to go ahead and take the rest of the stuff out of here and get it ready. Alright, so here we are. It's all gutted out and ready for the new motherboard. I got the new one here. I'm going to go ahead and unbox it and then slap it in there. Alright guys, so looking at this, it looks like I'm going to have to rearrange some of the supports for this. Alright, so just realized that without putting the back plate on the CPU fan, I'm not going to be able to attach it. So let's take this apart a little bit here. Fortunately, I only put 2 screws in so far. Alright guys, so I got all the case cables hooked up that go to the USB, the audio, things like that, power switch. I hooked up the other power to the motherboard, and now I'm going to go ahead and do the processor. And now guys, we're ready to hook up the SATA cables and see if it'll power on. So let's do that next. guys, so here it is, the moment of truth. It's all hooked up. I'm gonna go ahead and power it on and see what happens. Got power, that's a good thing. $16 gigs of RAM, it's detecting the RAM, it's detecting both drives. Please enter setup to configure your system. Alright guys, so I don't know if you saw when I powered on, but I was getting a message about the CPU fan speed. It turns out I plugged the CPU fan into the wrong spot, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that now and then power it up again and see how it goes. Alright, so I got that fixed. Let's go ahead and power it up again and see what happens. Alright, I don't hear any fan, that's good. I'm just going to let it boot up and see if it goes back into my old Windows installation, and then I'll worry about overclocking later. So now this is the next day. I got the machine fired up and everything was working great. I got the drivers installed, and then I noticed the Windows was no longer activated. So when I tried to go through the auto activation, it showed my previous configuration there associated with my account, but it wouldn't let me transfer that license over. But actually I got some help from Microsoft Chat support. They remoted into my machine, got it set up, and I was back up and running. So that was actually a pretty good experience. So kudos to Microsoft. So now we're going to go into some benchmarking on the machine. I'm going to start off with Cinebench. Again, this is the completely standard clocking for the 8700K and my GTX 1070. And we're going to start with Cinebench. So let me fire this off. Alright, so there we go guys. We got a 1413 for the CPU score and 143.51 frames per second, which is actually pretty good. Again, overclocking you can get much higher than that. But again, this is standard clocking. I didn't find many videos on the standard clocking, so I wanted to make sure that I made this one just out of the box. So let's go on to some game benchmarking next. For the game benchmark, I tried 4 different games, starting off with GTA 5. GTA 5 runs great on this configuration. With a mixture of high and ultra settings, mostly on ultra, we got an average frame rate of 78. The lowest I got was 67 and the highest I got was 94, but the average was right around that 78 frames per second with those really high settings, and it was buttery smooth. Even when the frames dropped, I didn't really notice it too much. Next up is 7 Days to Die, and this one again runs really great on this, which I'm surprised. I've had trouble with this game on a lot of machines, but on this one, with using the high preset setting, the only other thing I changed was I turned the motion blur off. We were getting an average of 118 frames per second. It dipped down to 93 and got as high as 135, but again, that average was 118. Next up is Battlefield 1 using ultra settings, and again, buttery smooth, didn't notice any slowdowns, got an average frame rate of 95 frames per second with a minimum of 77 and a maximum of 130. The last game that I tried was PUBG. This one was ultra settings on just about everything, which you're probably not going to want to do just because it makes it harder to spot people. But if you max everything up to ultra settings, with this configuration, I was getting an average of about 85 frames per second with a dip down to 59 and a max at 111. So all 4 of those games, even at their lowest dip, were extremely playable, and I never really noticed any drop in frames or anything. So the last thing I did was export a 4K video that was about 5 minutes long. I did some transitions, a few different tracks, some color correction, nothing too crazy. And it took right around 6 minutes to export. That's with Adobe Premiere using just the 4K YouTube settings that are baked into Premiere. It took about 6 minutes to export that 5-minute video, which was fantastic at full 4K. That's a huge improvement above what I was getting with my old processor. So guys, I've been really happy with this build. For what I do, it does everything that I need to do. It does it a lot faster. I'm getting a little bit better performance in the games. The video editing it's going to save me so much time with the video editing. I can't even tell you. And that's the main reason why I got it. So I'm really happy with this so far. So as always, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. If you like the video, go ahead and hit that like button and leave some comments below. And I will see you next time. Come see me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. Love meeting new people on there and chatting with them. Take care, guys.